Welcome to a new episode of the FMCG Guys, live from Stackline's EMEA e-commerce summit. If you're listening to this, just to let you know, you can also watch it on our YouTube channel. That's the great thing of doing these live episodes. And very excited to be here today to learn more about one of the words that we're hearing more about, which is connected commerce. And to start the conversation and start the event, I'm sitting here with Ben Robbins, who's the Senior Director for Professional Services at Stackline. Hey Ben, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Daniel.
And thanks for daring to come on the FMCG Guys episode.
Yeah, of course. Thanks very much.
Excellent. So Ben, maybe for the audience to get to know you a bit better, what is your role at Stackline and what does Stackline actually do?
Yeah, so I lead professional services here in Europe, and we support brands at all stages of their e-commerce journey, basically. So Stackline is an AI-enabled retail intelligence and activation platform. We support 7,000 of the world's biggest brands, and we help them navigate the e-commerce journey and grow into the future, basically.
Which I'm sure you're very familiar with, because I was spying your LinkedIn profile as I normally do, and I saw that you actually have a background in FMCG. So
yes.
Maybe tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I come from Philips and Reckitt, and I think that really enables me to understand what the brands are thinking about, what troubles them, the challenges that they have, and allows me to decode what we do here at Stackline and make it actionable and usable for them.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, like your career, because I know that you've done agency, you've done FMCG, so
yes.
I think that's very good that you've been at both sides of the table, no? To really...
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a core element that I can speak to. I think that understanding and decoding what they're thinking about, the challenges of today and the things perhaps they're worrying about tomorrow are a big factor. And yeah, also understanding the different dynamics within the brands, the different teams and how they can connect together.
Yeah, because FMCG, I think we're a bit in a crossroads now. So the industry was doing okay, I would say. Then COVID hit. And I think in general, in most categories of FMCG, it was a positive impact, right?
Yeah.
Like sales were up, demand was up, like because a lot of products are like home consumed. How do you see like the industry now, post the COVID situation? Like, what's your reading of the whole industry?
I think as you say, like the industry rapidly changed. For most FMCG companies, it was huge, and it allowed them to grow rapidly. I think, in all honesty, quite a lot of things broke at that time, and they're still, in some ways, retrospectively trying to understand how to seize e-commerce in the best possible way. I think as well, because of that explosive growth, what you see is a fragmentation of the e-commerce or the commerce in general marketplace. There's so many different options. Really, it was Amazon and eBay perhaps before, maybe Allegro if you're in Poland, things like that. But now you've got TikTok, you've got social, you've got so many different elements that you need to contend with, and so many people shopping online. It really means that they need to understand how they can tackle that. And also, there's so much more competition than ever before, right? Because of that explosion in sales, more consumers are looking to brands and looking to influencers to guide them. And so they need to think about who their competition is. It's probably not who it was 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, especially when you compare, like 5 years ago was basically like put an ad on TV, maybe Facebook and so on was already strong, but now it's just like all over the place, which we'll go more into. In terms of like shopper behaviors, any like observations of how the shopper interacts with brands or right now and how it's changed?
I think it's changed wildly. I think that like if you take it again 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more, the brands used to be able to go to the consumer and say, our product is fantastic. Now it's all about social proof, the reviews. People are looking to TikTok, looking to the influencers to guide them. Is this a product that they want to buy? And now there's, as we talked about, a plethora of options for similar types of products. You've really got to find a way of connecting with that consumer on an emotional basis, more than just a transactional basis. And when you get that sale, you now need to make sure that your product is good enough to stand the test of time and get that consumer coming back again and again to purchase your product.
Yeah, but that's a big one, because you talked about like new competition and so on. We find there's these brands that, for example, are backed by a celebrity and they like reach a huge popularity and then they go down. I mean, there's an energy drink that we can all think of, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to talk about that one as well. I think that we can all think of that, and if the product isn't going to substantiate the huge publicity they have, what's it worth at the end of the day? Not very much, right?
Also in beauty, like some indie beauty brands supported by celebrities, bought by Fortune by one of the big ones, and then they like go down in sales. No?
Exactly.
It's an interesting one. So we've seen a like rapid acceleration of e-commerce during COVID, and now the euphoria is probably not there anymore. But obviously, it's here to stay, right? And as you said, like there's a lot of competition, a lot of new challenges in the digital shelf, new retail media networks, etc. And if you can like boil down all the noise, which is a lot to boil down, what are the like some of the key challenges the brands that you're talking with are worried about? Like what do they come to you with?
Well, I think if we think about the big elephant in the room at the moment is AI. How do we use AI? Okay, I think the common way, and we don't know how it's going to necessarily progress over the next few years, is how do we integrate it into our business? And mainly that's at the moment done with content writing and things like that. Maybe using it to support team members to write that content. But does that really perform as well as human written content at this stage? The indication is no, right? But I think that we can expect the integration of AI and human interaction to become more homogenized over the next few years, and it become indistinguishable. And I think that with those trends, we need to, again, think about that human connection. How are brands connecting on a human level with the consumer, and really kind of making an emotional connection more than a transactional one. So that's core. Like, how do they integrate AI, but also make sure that the consumer is at the center of everything they do? Also, we've already talked about it as well. Things are very fragmented, so the digital shelf becomes essential, right? Making sure that you have the data to substantiate what you're seeing across all of these different retailers. So can you understand the brand messaging across a Tesco and an Amazon and a TikTok? Is it consistent? Is a consumer seeing a consistent message? And then, making sure that you've got the data to action those things and continue to grow your business in this increasingly difficult time.
If you had to define and make it boil down something else, what the digital shelf is? Yeah,
so the digital shelf is simply a way, it's just an online aisle, basically. So the same as if you were walking down a supermarket, you would see your brands versus all of your other competitors. Obviously in digital world, that's far greater. Kind of popularized by Jeff Bezos, it's the everything store. So he wanted to put on Amazon, he wanted to put on everything that you could possibly want in that category. Now I think we're moving to a stage where it's the everything store. Consumers want to be able to buy something instantly in the place that's most easy for them to access. And so while brands still need to have some targeted approach, they don't want to boil the ocean and try and do everything poorly, they do need to understand how a consumer is seeing them in different places.
And why is it important it's kind of self-explanatory, but I think it's good that the listeners can hear, why is the digital shelf important? I think that it's good for e-commerce leaders to hear it as well, so they can tell the CEOs in the right words, because I think that sometimes they find it hard to write, really say that, the 3 things that will make a difference for the business if they do well in the digital shelf.
Well, I think the digital shelf, again, I think part of it is it's not just about the sales, it's about the marketing. So you need to make sure that your brand perception and your brand image is consistent across multiple retailers and multiple channels. Realistically, you shouldn't be able to sell a difference between the offline world and the online world, or social, or Amazon, or whatever it might be, because then you're, again, helping to connect that to the consumer. I think also the digital shelf is very important because it allows you to perhaps understand where your consumer's going and then prioritize certain aspects of that and how you're connecting with them.
And then at the end of the day, I guess that in the lower part of the funnel, it's also about getting more sales online,
Of course, yes, of course. Yeah, it's about getting those sales online, and then understanding how you can retain them as well, as we talked about before. Loyalty is probably becoming king these days.
When you advise your clients on the digital shelf, what type of key metrics do you advise them to look at?
Obviously, the digital shelf is becoming more fragmented, as we've talked about. There's lots of different places, but in many ways it hasn't changed. Although it's more complex, it hasn't changed from years gone by. I think that the basics are still the fundamentals. Making sure that your content is clear, understandable, showing your features, attributes and benefits to the consumer, getting that message across, showing the social proof, doing those sorts of things in a clear and consistent manner is the core thing, I think, to achieving a successful digital shelf.
I think the creative side is one that's like this voices that they're starting to like mumble about it in the background of how important that will be, because this is the data part, which is super important, but I think the creative and how your consumers or how the consumers perceive your brand will become more important. Are people asking you much about that part?
I think we can certainly look at like testing the creative, seeing what's resonating with people, and then obviously there are data tools, Stackline tools that allow you to understand the consumer path to purchase, and that allows you to dive into what is capturing that consumer attention, what keywords are they searching for, what ways are they getting there, and you can harness that to, again, as you said, like grow your business and ultimately get the sales that you're looking for.
But I don't know if to say I was surprised by that, but I think that I was surprised by how clear you were when you said the number one priority for FMCG brands is understanding AI. I thought that was very interesting, because you have like retail media networks, the digital share, like you have so many topics that are important, capturing new consumers and so on. So how are you, with AI specifically, how are you helping FMCG brands engage with AI, like with use cases and so on?
Well, Stackline is an AI-enabled platform. So from all stages of the funnel, we are able to understand from an awareness stage to a conversion stage to a loyalty stage, how they can understand the consumer and how they can connect to that consumer in a better way. So there's competitor analytics that they can look at. They've obviously got the insights on top of that they can use my team for, or things like that. And then obviously the content aspect that we can support with. And it's really understanding, as I said, like how to harness it for the most effective way, really.
Yeah, it means that basically working with Stackline, you have like already an AI use case, which is, I think that it's good because you're already showing brands how they can work with AI. I have heard quite a lot about AI, that if you don't have the right data, you can't really use AI because it gives you results that are like, I don't know if inconsistent is the word, but that ultimately don't add any value. Is that true?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, Stackline has been using AI since before it became cool. AI is only as good as the data that you feed into it. And Stackline has been using a plethora of data and collecting data for such a long time that our AI models are incredibly robust and consistent is what you're looking for as well, right?
Yeah, so if you onboard a new customer, not like you, they have to do all the learning process and so on.
Correct.
Yeah. What about predictive analytics? Because that's a term that we've heard quite a lot of, maybe more like 6-7 months ago or a year, but not so much now. What's going on with that?
So yeah, forecasting is again a foundational element of Stackline. We again use our AI to understand what are the trends and how that will impact the future of your business. Looking at what is going on in your category, looking at what is going on in your competitors, and harnessing that in the correct way really allows you to stand ahead of the competition, because you can confidently say, these sorts of changes will lead to an impact in my sales, in my market share, and really allow me to grow my business.
Yeah, I know when we heard a lot of that. We heard a lot of that about predictive analytics when stocks were breaking during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Where they were talking about like, what are the trends going to be? But it just opens so many doors, because it's not only like trends of like buying more, buying less, but it's like geopolitical challenges that come in and affect. No, it's a fascinating world. If you look back 1 year, a lot has happened in 1 year. What kind of trends stood out to you from in the FMCG e-commerce world in EMEA?
I think again it's that increased competition, increased fragmentation. I think brands are quite confused, or can be quite confused, as to where to spend that additional dollar, how to retain that consumer. And so getting the right data and the right interpretation of that data really allows brands to be informed in what strategy they should be implementing, and understanding, with budgets being a little bit tighter than they probably were this time last year, or maybe the year before, with the macroeconomic climate that we're in now, navigating and guiding them on where to best get their greatest return on investment is really, really important. Yeah.
And what emerging trends do you think will make an impact in the next year?
Well, I think if we're looking at kind of macro trends, I think AI is going to be a core component of that. I think finding a way to integrate that into your business model to make sure that you're harnessing the human and the AI to grow your business in the best possible way. I think that will be very important. I think some of the other threads that we've talked about before as well, in terms of the people want to buy from people. They don't necessarily want to buy from brands anymore. We've seen that with the proliferation of like these influencers, right? So how can your brand think about interacting with an influencer or projecting themselves in a way that is closer to the consumer? I think that in many ways, while data is very, very useful, and of course we provide fantastic data here, it is only one data point, and you have to understand that it's a consumer at the end of the day, at the end of that data point. How do you connect to that? And then incrementality. If you're going to have money, like a certain pot of money for your advertising or for your strategy, making sure that every dollar that you do spend or every pound that you spend is actually driving an incremental sale, more sales than you would have got if you hadn't spent that advertising pound. And those sorts of things are what brands should be thinking about going forward.
Incrementality in a time where a lot of brands are cutting costs, so it's also like the resources that you have left, how do you use them in the wisest way possible, and that will give you that return on investment without compromising on the long term, no? So there's a lot. What do you think the scenario will be like in 18 months if you had a crystal ball? So in 2024, what will happen?
I wish I did have a crystal ball. I think that honestly, the brands that will succeed will be the ones that understand that they have to have that consistent message across all of the retailers. They have to get close to the consumer. They have to take feedback from the consumer. And they understand that loyalty is that key link to continue to grow. We find from the research that we've done here at Stackline that brands typically only retain 12% of the customers that buy their product. Now, some of those do churn the category completely, but that still leaves 50-60% that remain in the category that go to one of your competitors. And so understanding what they're looking for, what failings perhaps you had, or what you could do to close that gap, whether that be pricing or maybe the content that you were talking about or the product itself, that will be really important to kind of make sure that you continue to grow. Yeah.
And if there's a brand that comes from the outside, fresh into the EMEA market, any advice you would give them?
Well, I think first of all, they'd have to work with Stackline, right?
Of course.
But other than that, I think that it's making sure that they've got access to the correct data, making sure that they're seeing that digital shelf, making sure that they're understanding the competitive landscape, perhaps where the gaps are, perhaps where the trends are going. And then also understanding that they probably can't boil the ocean right from the beginning. They need to understand that they need to probably win on maybe a TikTok or an Amazon or something like that. And then once they've nailed that, they can then begin to broaden and begin to expand that marketplace outwards a little bit.
Because if you want to like win in all channels, just the amount of investment you need would be just unrealistic. No, It's probably better to be strong in the niche. And then, look what the world has become when we're putting on the same page TikTok and Amazon, right?
Yes.
Unbelievable. Yeah, right. Another hot topic, which when I asked you at the beginning, I thought that could be one of the topics that would be like top priority for brands. Retail media networks. Every store that you find on every corner has its own retail media network, which makes sense because it's a great way for retailers to really enhance their value proposition to brands in terms of like upper funnel activation on their website and the store, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it just creates this level of complexity, which is unattainable. Like, I don't know how many retail media networks there are in Europe right now, but what is it, in the 30s or something like that?
Probably, yeah, bountiful, yeah, certainly.
So you have all these retail media networks. You're an FMCG company, you don't, and you just have like you have a big budget, but it's limited, right? So how are you advising brands to like prioritize this type of investment? And also, how can they understand like all the different data they're getting from all over the place?
Well, I think that you have to find a way of probably putting that into some internal dashboard so that you can see it in one place. You understand what the dynamics are. I think as well, you have to do some form of analysis, perhaps work with experts to understand that although there are these wide range of retail media networks, which ones are going to work for you? Where is your consumer shopping? What is the easiest point of entry for them? And trying to win there. And then understanding there are probably some similarities. What are those and how can you play to those similarities, really? And trying to make sure that you are seeing the e-commerce or the commerce space as one now. Like we can't, I don't think, continue to see it as Amazon or social or TikTok. You have to look at it as an online presence, and how are you going to best manage that online presence, really?
Yeah, but of course still with retail media networks, right, the way that it is right now, you have to negotiate with each and every one of them. So
yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, getting the right experts in the room, getting teams that can provide negotiation expertise for those sorts of things, that perhaps have already negotiated better rates for you if you work with them, all of those sorts of things will allow you to get the upper hand and get an understanding of these things quicker than if you were perhaps trying to do it yourself one by one by one.
Yeah, and then this is the part for brands that's like, who's responsible for this? No, is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it media? I mean, I think there's like a big internal war going on in all these companies of like, who gets to decide, where does the money come from, and so on.
Of course, and I think that's where my experience coming and working at Reckitt and Philips is very helpful in this seat at the moment, because from the outside looking in, you can't understand that these teams are having these conversations themselves. And actually, as a Stackline or as another provider or supporter, you can help them have those conversations. Tell them by guiding them with what other brands are doing, how they're thinking about it, what teams typically lead it, and then maybe providing some best-in-class examples. But yeah, it is a complicated thing at the moment. Where do things sit? And that again is where some brands have started to think about things as centre of excellences, so it's everyone's business, or maybe they've tried to roll them back into the core business.
And in-house agencies as well sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually we do get people come to us and say, we need you because we need you to help connect things together as much as anything. And so that is a very important.
You're like kind of a relationship counselor for companies, right?
Exactly, yes.
And when it comes to data, is there any like specific KPI or data set of any specific area that FMCGs are more interested in?
I think it comes back to that incrementality again at the moment. Like brands want to make sure that everything that they are doing is actually adding value. So brands used to be very obsessed with like return on ad spend, whereas now I think it's more of a focus on incrementality. So if you didn't spend that advertising dollar, would you have got that sale, yes or no? And so focusing on that, I think as well that it's very important to understand your competitive positioning. So how are you doing versus your competition? What perhaps are they doing well? And then looking at the simple things like the e-commerce formula. Like I like to think about e-commerce is very much an input-driven metric. So while brands like to think about sales and market share, in and of themselves, there's little you can do to actually influence them without understanding your traffic or your conversion or even your sell price, right? And by working it backwards and understanding how you can influence those things, understanding how you can influence the inputs, that's really where you get the successful companies and the successful growth.
Got it. Yeah, because actually brings me to the next point, which is loyalty. So I think divorces have been up for a long time. So loyalty, jobs are not forever, relationships are not forever, and brands maybe are not forever, no? So why do you think that customers, like, what did you say, 12% loyalty?
12%, yeah.
Why is it so low?
I think
like people don't use the same dishwasher every now and then, or they don't eat the same chocolate.
I think, well, part of it, I think around 30-40% of customers are, once they buy from you, they leave it in the category altogether. So they're just one-time purchases, which is useful to know, but not necessarily something to action. That 50-60% that are moving from you to someone else, now that's something that you can really harness, and that will really help you explode your revenue and your market share if you can harness it correctly. I think it really comes down to the fact, like we talked about before, like data has been something that has been integrated into businesses, but we also have to understand that it's a consumer at the end of the day. What does that consumer do? They're not just a number in your dashboard.
Or a robot.
Exactly. And so you have to find a way of getting that emotional connection with them, understanding that if your product isn't very good, you're not going to get them back. So continuing to iterate, continuing to make sure that product is getting better and better is actually serving what the consumer wants, and making them feel, I think, as a part of a family or a team that you're on together will really help you grow that loyalty number. Yeah,
I think that's a fascinating challenge, I think, for FMCG brands to be able to build that link with the customer, maybe on the digital side, creating like an experience or something like that that will just automatically make them buy that brand, no? But I don't think it's happening much.
Well, certainly not in Europe, it's not. I think if you look to Asia, I think the proliferation of like social commerce there is somewhat different.
Yeah.
There are platforms there where they encourage you to buy as a family or as a group or as a team and share discount codes amongst each other and make it feel as if you're in this together. I think that's where we will get to in Europe, but we're still obviously a few years away from that. But I think the brands that start to think about that now and are perhaps already winning in Asia and can reverse engineer that, that's where we'll see the success in Europe in the coming years.
No, and it's an interesting one because I think that we're just getting used to immediacy across the board. But that also means like super low attention spans, which is a challenge for brands, right? And it's a challenge for me when I send cold emails, people don't read them as much as they did before. So getting attention from people is challenging. And that's like how you, on one hand, attract new consumers, but also and as well retain them, no? Because if you want to explain that brand message. So how can brands map out all these like engagement moments with the consumer in this time of immediacy?
Yeah, I think it's understanding there will be certain types of consumers that do have that very short attention span, and those perhaps that don't. Understanding and meeting them where they are, understanding which platforms perhaps that lends well to, understanding how can you maybe on a brand store on Amazon, can you increase your dwell time? Can you do that on a D2C platform? On TikTok, yes, you probably need to capture their attention in 3 seconds or something like that. But understanding there will be slight nuances, still consistent brand messaging, but there's going to be different ways that you're going to have to play into that. And then, making sure that you've got the data to see, is this leading to the outcome that you're desiring? Yeah,
understand your consumer, like if you're cater to who will buy you or buys you, no?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's an interesting one. What about, so we're approaching with the speed of everything, we are approaching like Prime Day, and then we have all the events in November. So these pulse period events are critical opportunities for brands, obviously. What advice are you giving these brands already to maximize these like big shopping occasions? Prime Day, Singles Day, Black Friday, of course. The others have been so emerging that I forget the name of the original one. Cyber Monday as well.
Yeah, of course. Look, obviously, for the vast majority of brands, these peak periods are the lion's share of their revenue for the year. And so these are event periods that you need to get right. And we will obviously advise brands on making sure that they've got enough stock, that they've got the lead-in sorted, that they've got enough stock for the after period so that they're capturing that halo effect, all of those sorts of things. But actually, I think the consistent message that we need to pass on to brands is that you can't think about these events in isolation. If you are struggling or losing in the rest of the year, that is going to have an impact on your peak periods or your Prime Day or your Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And so it's making sure that you've got your basics right, you've got your supply chain sorted, you've got that messaging right, your consumers are huge advocates for you, so when they see that deal, they share it with their friends. All of those things you won't necessarily know about it on the day, but you can tell that effect is massive for you. Are there
like some tricks that brands can use to draw more attention to themselves in that period, apart from these fundamentals?
I think it's to make sure that they're available everywhere, making sure that you're driving traffic on the platform and off the platform. So is it a case that your majority of your business is currently on Amazon? Can you get awareness on TikTok? Can you get influencers? Can you get deal sites to be promoting you at that time? Can you be doing email campaigns? Can you make sure that you are everywhere for that period of time? Obviously in a fiscally responsible way as much as possible, but thinking about ways to hack that, to make it seem like, wow, this company is everywhere, I need to buy it now.
Yeah, so in other ways, thinking outside the box, no?
Exactly, yeah.
Are there any like specific 2023 cyber holiday events that you learned from that you're recommending for this year and brands should take into account?
I think it's the micro events actually that are very interesting at the moment. It might be specific for your category or your subcategory. Maybe it's the spring cleaning, spring deals area that's important. But actually, these big pulse periods are getting very expensive to buy those placements, to do all of those sorts of things. And like obviously, if you're promoting, everybody else is promoting as well. So the price is although lower, is consistent to what it is normally. So it's about understanding what are the times when perhaps your competitors are napping, not thinking about this, but there's still the increased traffic on the platform, and actually finding those gaps that will be a real significant impact for your business. But it will vary category to category, so you'll have to pay attention what is of importance to you, really.
Yeah, no, obviously, and I think it goes back to data, AI, and all these things can really help you better understand these things, and ultimately, or having a certain vision, I guess,
of course,
also helps, no? And many, like when you think about like Black Friday and these big events, we've always seen on TV Americans lining up and not apologies to our American audience, but that's what we see from Europe, lining up and then taking these like big electronics with them. So what about other brands, FMCG, food, laundry? How should they think about Black Friday?
It used to be a case that it was TVs, like you said, we saw people fighting over the cheapest TV in the store or whatever it might be. I think that the halo effect is across all brands now. I think that the traffic on those sorts of days is absolutely massive. So you need to make sure that you are promoting, you need to make sure that you are positioning yourself in a way that the consumer wants to see you. You need to make sure that your stock's there, and then you are in a great position to take advantage of that peak period.
Great, well, great advice, and this was super interesting. So will I even learn more during the conference?
I hope so, yes.
Excellent. Well, if anyone wants to learn more, feel free to contact Ben directly, and you'll also be at Shop Talk with me.
Yes.
By the time this airs, probably in a week. So do say hi to us if you're there.
Yeah, see you in Barcelona.
And thanks so much for joining me. It was great.
Yes, thank you very much for having us. Thank you.